Hey guys, so this video I want to share with you some tips for Ezio for his follow-up attack, ultimate and poison build. So generally Ezio is a repulse character, so he counters a lot. So these are the general tips because even if his other build are focused onto, let's say, follow-up attack, poison or ultimate, his overall kit still revolves around repulse. So first, Tips 1. Make sure to cast S2 every round unless if fighting experience buff is still active. Fighting experience buff is the one that grants him the ability to repulse every time the enemy attacks. And one thing about fighting experience is that it can stack. And if you use higher rank incantation, like higher rank S2, you will get 2 stacks. And if you use rank 3, then you get 3 stacks. I do not recommend specifically to merge the incantation then you use it, because he doesn't gain Moxie from merging incantation, so I don't think that is necessary. So just at the start of the round, if you do not have fighting experience, then you use S2. If you still have the fighting experience buff, then you can choose not to use S2. Even if you use it, it will just stack up, which is not a bad idea at all. For tips 2, if the enemy is not attacking this round and you don't have the fighting experience buff, then don't bother using S2, because if the enemy is not going to attack, you will not counter anyway. So don't waste your AP to cast S2 thinking that you will be able to counter. For tip number 3, his ultimate is triggered at the start of the round. Even if this round you have fully charged synchronization, it will not trigger until the next round. So make sure the debuffs are all refreshed. So what I mean by that is sometimes you have a buff on Ezio and it's only 1 round left. By the next round, when you use ultimate, that buff will disappear, so you will not get the buff. Same goes for the enemy debuff. If you have defense down on the enemy, this round is only 1 turn left, you move on to the next round and it will be gone. So make sure to refresh every time you see that you are very close to get synchronization charged up. So reapply the buff and debuff as necessary. For the follow-up attack build, this is tip 4. Use S1 after buff and before attacks of other ally. So what do I mean? If you look into the image below, here I have Mercuria using buff, then I attack, and then I have Flutter Page doing another attack. In this way, Flutter Page incantation will trigger the follow-up attack, because when you use Ezio's S1, he will inflict Assassin's Mark, and when Flutter Page attacks, then Ezio will do a follow-up attack. For the secondary weapon, this is tip 5. For the first secondary weapon is the highest damage output out of all his weapons due to the excess crit rate conversion. So this is good against most fights. If you have a lot of unit support units that provide same crit, then you want to use this weapon in order for him to convert it to crit damage, so we can deal a lot of damage against the enemy. So this is generally good against all type of fights. For the second secondary weapon, it is best against multiple enemy. In fact, I really like this one, especially if you have multiple enemy on the field, because when you kill one more, it will just hit another one, and if he kills the other one, then he will attack the other one. So it's rather interesting to see him able to kill one enemy after another in the same round. Okay, so this is best if you have enemies that has low HP, so you can quickly kill them. So which means if you're fighting against a boss, that you have multiple minions that respawns. So if you kill the minion, then he will do extra follow-up attack. So this is best against fights where boss has minions. Or if you just have so many minions and they die and they respawn, which is like Lucid Escape, use this build. For the third one, this is more party specific rather than fight specific, because this weapon allow him to get +1 fighting experience and ICOT when he use S2. So in this case, you don't have to use S2 every round, you just have to use S2 every other round. So this give much more flexibility, especially if you have another character, another unit in the party that are very AP hungry. So you will be able to use Ezio with that unit. So for example here, as I did a showcase, you can do this with Liang Yue. So Liang Yue, Ezio can work because Ezio can be quite AP friendly, allowing Liang Yue to sustain her ultimate and doing damage as well. For ultimate, tip 6, prioritize AP to maintain the rotation of other ally. That's because when other ally uses ultimate, they grant 10% synchronization to Ezio. So even if Ezio doesn't act at all, if you ult enough from your allies, Ezio will be able to cast his ultimate as well. So in that case, you would want to focus on your ally to use ultimate in order to charge Ezio. On top of that, apart from synchronization, using allies ultimate also grant Ezio Eagle Guidance. And Eagle Guidance, if you have more stacks, 1 stacks equals to 1 extra attack when he's using his ultimate. So that 1 extra attack is referring to the arrow or the X attack, the one that you can choose during the ultimate sequence. So yeah, but I would still suggest that you sustain S2 as per tips 1. Okay, you want to ensure S2, the fighting experience buff is active. Other than that, you don't necessarily need to use S1 and give that AP to your teammates. For tips number 7, the ultimate weapons. The first one is if you're fighting against enemy where you have multiple boss with similar HP, then you want to use this weapon. It is simply because the other 2 weapon is not that suitable for those style fights, so you use the first weapon. This weapon gives you 15% synchronization charge at the start of the round, at the start of every round. For the second secondary weapon, so this is mainly for single target boss, and that's because it deals additional 30% damage dealt to the enemy. But one disadvantage compared to the first weapon is that this second weapon only provides 15% synchronization charge after you use the ultimate. So it's not at the start of every round. So in that case, it has slower charging rate compared to the first weapon. So this is the best if you have teammates that uses a lot of ultimate, like He's the Best. Because He's the Best can provide him a lot of synchronization if you do it right. You can even provide him up to 30% every single round, allow him to get to his ultimate in 2 to 3 rounds guaranteed. So in that situation, you can use this secondary weapon. For the third secondary weapon, it's best against stages with multiple enemy, where there are minions for you to kill, because each time a minion dies, it will charge Ezio synchronization. For tips 8, use his S1 after using all incantation that applies poison. This is to increase the Genesis damage that he does when using his S1, because his S1 will trigger the Genesis damage based on the number of stacks of poison. The more you have, the more damage he does. So use it all first to inflict as many poison, and then you attack with his S1. For tips 9, his secondary weapon for poison. The first one, again, if you are fighting enemy where there are 2 to 3 main boss, then you want to use the first one. If it's a single target enemy like in Raid, you use the secondary weapon. And the third one is also if you are fighting against multiple enemy that respawns a lot, then you use the third secondary weapon, since all the poison stacks on the minion will be transferred to another enemy when they die. Now for Psychube, depending on follow-up attack, ultimate or poison build, these are some of the recommendations. You probably have watched the video on the damage calculation, but here for follow-up attack, I would suggest you to use Jiu Niang's Psychube, especially if you have Flutter Page in the party, or else you can go for Ezio's. For ultimate build as well, you can also go for Qiuliangzi, but I would suggest to use Ezio's instead. If you're going for ultimate, you are probably using ultimate because you are fighting an enemy that doesn't attack you that often. So which means if Ezio doesn't do that much repulse, that would justify why you are using the ultimate build. If the enemy is going to attack you a lot, there's just no reason why you are using ultimate over follow-up attack. So given that scenario, I would suggest you to use Ezio because Qiuliangzi will probably take, Qiuliangzi Psychube will probably take a while in order to get to 10 stacks. For poison, 37, 5-star Psychube, which is also a kind of like a budget Psychube, so it's really good for him. And Qiuliangzi as well as his own, they all work. For team recommendation, here I put co-DPS because he kind of able to work with DPS character as well, not just some DPS or support. So here the follow-up attack team, I have Flutter Page and then Mercuria. Liang Yue works well with Ezio because Liang Yue also rank up his incantation, allowing him to have more stacks of fighting experience, so allowing him to be very AP friendly. In that case, Liang Yue will be able to use her ultimate and keep up Qiangliang on the field. And since Liang Yue also does a lot of follow-up attack, so it does make sense to put them in the team. It's actually pretty decent. Jay as well, Jay Bebbles also work with Ezio follow-up attack. And then for sustain, I would recommend Fatutu or Kiparina. If you're using Jay, then you want to bring Bebbles as well. And next is for the ultimate. Obviously, Melania is the best choice we have here to boost ultimate damage. Here I also put in Flutter Page, that's because still Ezio does a lot of actions and the gust stacks can be like 20 over 30 stacks, 30 plus stacks, and just 35 stacks, for example, 30 to 35 stacks will be 60% damage dealt to the party. So Flutter Page can work with Ezio even if it's ultimate. But we are not capitalizing on the creep to creep damage multiplier, just for your record. Lopera is a very good unit with Ezio in ultimate mode. That's because Lopera provides the creep to creep damage conversion, and Ezio has very high creep, but he cannot convert it in the ultimate mode. So Lopera allowed him to do so. Argers as well, good for single target boss fights, where Ezio's ultimate is single target. He's the best, can provide a lot of synchronization to Ezio, allowing him to ult more frequently. So for sustain, generous sustain, medicine pocket, Fatutu. If you want Fatutu and Calcania combo, it works well with ultimate. That's because in ultimate mode you can do a lot of, because of the eagle guidance, you will be able to do a lot of additional attacks. So Fatutu and Calcania hospital team can work with Ezio ultimate. Then here we have Kiparina, which is also a universal, and because of the repulse that he does even in ultimate mode, he can provide a lot of Eureka to Kiparina so that Kiparina can shield the party. For poison, obviously the best we have here is Tuesday. Flutter Page, Gas Stack not only provide damage dealt but also provide Genesis damage. And this helps make Ezio deal higher Genesis damage, and on top of that, Flutter Page AP +1 does help the team. Jay with Tuesday is also a very crazy combo. That's because every time Jay counters, he inflicts burn, and due to it being a debuff, it has a chance to inflict poison as well. So you can really stack to a very high number of poison with Jay and Tuesday. Willow, he inflicts 2 poison stack at the start of the round, and every time somebody attacks the enemy, she will inflict 2 poison stacks as well. up to 2 times per round. So in that case, she can just stand there, providing a lot of poison to the enemy. Liang Yue, I put her here as well because if you go for the Bane of All Evil piece, she will inflict 4 to 5 stacks, 3 to 5 stacks of poison to help Ezio do more Genesis damage. And for sustain, if you are using Flutter Page, again you might want to use Fatutu. That is because Fatutu can do a lot of follow-up attack depending on how many times the shell is being moving around. And every time he does a follow-up attack, he will inflict more shell, and inflicting shell is a debuff that also trigger poison. Sotheby, the poison sustain, and Kiparina, due to Ezio doing repulse, again you will be able to get quite a good value of shield from Kiparina. So that's all for these tips. I will not include the team recommendation as well as the Psychube recommendation in the infographic. I will just focus on the 3 builds that he has, which is flow up attack, ultimate, and poison. Anyway, thank you for watching and have a good day.